Another exciting moment at the For All Women and Girls NGAF podcast. Today, we have a super woman. I can't even describe her yet. Very young, but really making the waves within the climate space, and especially the new buzzword, green hydrogen. And this is just tying into what we are looking at for this space for all women and girls, really tapping into the generation of women who are getting things done in a space where they're respecting the whole of society, and they're also looking at men as people who own their power to inspire and to ensure that they uplift others. But as well, women who are not afraid to share their journeys, who are not afraid to share their stories, who are embracing the spaces they are in to be able to ensure that as they rise, the community rises with them. Allow me to give this opportunity to my wonderful guest to introduce herself.
Thank you very much, Viridiana. Such a pleasure, such a pleasure. I've just been trying to restrain myself from smiling, but my name is Lorraine Njeri. I am a junior climate and energy advisor at GIZ within the space of enabling environment development within Sub-Saharan Africa, specifically the Kenyan green hydrogen economy. Again, one of the interesting buzzwords as of recently. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And just Lorraine becoming. And that is where we want to start. Even for you acknowledging your journey even right now as a junior advisor, just taking that title as a junior advisor. Can you take us through your journey? I know you're a recent graduate. You just graduated the other day.
Yes.
Maybe just tell us, is it 2 years back?
Or 2 years back, 2023.
2023. Just take us through your journey of becoming this junior advisor.
Well, it goes back to JKUAT, Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. I pursued an undergraduate in Agriculture and Biosystems Engineering, a very interesting subject that I was very passionate at that time. I remember back in high school when, the typical question is, what do you want to do? And I toyed around with a lot of ideas, pharmaceutical specialist, radiologist. But at the time I was thinking, agriculture, my mom has been a farmer for the longest time possible, in the animal production side. And for a long time I knew there was money in agriculture. Yes. But now the thing that pushed me to pursue agricultural engineering was I was asking myself, there's no one within my class mentioning anything about agriculture. So for me, I already saw an opportunity in the sense of an agriculturalist in future as a youth who's gone through the curriculum setup. So that is what led me to choose this agricultural engineering. And it was a very interesting, very, very interesting 5 years. And, now that you've taken me back to that time, my goodness.
Yes.
I think the higher level education is where a lot of us as young girls really are desperate for guidance, are really desperate for that hand-holding, and we are in a sensitive space where a lot can happen.
Yes.
And if I can pick a very specific scenario that, is unfortunate to be happening to a lot of us young girls, comes with you're in a STEM kind of topic, you're in a space where a lot of the students you're sharing with the classrooms are men or gentlemen. Most of the teachers and professors are men.
Yeah.
You're learning from a very tender age how to navigate these spaces with people who have a very strong belief in who they are in the space they're supposed to hold. It was, I think, in my third year. This is the time you're supposed to specialize. If it's soil and water engineering or bioprocessing engineering. So for me, I was very certain I wanted soil and water, environmental engineering, because I didn't like the idea of being in a plant setup because it's a lot of maintenance through and through.
Yes.
But why I'm bringing this particular time is, again, you're dealing with professors. There are some of them who are teaching assistants. And at this specific time, before you start your classes, there's an introduction between you, the students, and the professor.
Yeah.
And there are the rules that are set up by the professor, which is you have to attend this class for this number of times, so
Yes.
and so. That is all given. But I remember I missed the second class.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not lying. True to that, at that time I was having a stomach upset.
Yes,
and I went to
yeah.
the hospital and I had my ticket. When I came back and I reached out to my professor, because he was minusing marks for every class that you're missing.
Yes.
I was like, I introduced myself. My name is Lorraine. I'm in your class. And it's unfortunate that I missed your class, but I'm hoping to catch up in the next class. You cannot believe what happened.
What happened?
This man, I do not explicitly mentioned that it was indeed my fault that I did not come to that class. And the only way for us to resolve this is if I meet him at his house.
No way.
I was as shocked as you are. As shocked as you are. And it escalated so bad to a point where at least I was quite quick on my feet. I managed to download the recording app that you can be able to download and record the video. I mean, the phone call. So I was able to have all this in audio, because he mentioned whatever he wanted. He said, call me a bit later. So I called him a bit later. You know, the app is still running. Still very explicit about what he wants. And he said, if you do not follow through with this, I'll make sure you remain at that fourth year. Through
Forever.
and through and through. And there's nothing as scary as someone who's pursuing a heavy course that is long to have the idea of another longer
period within
period.
That. Yeah.
Anyway, I took it up with the dean of students and so forth and so forth. It took quite a long time, emotionally frustrating. And the most unfortunate thing was the end of that, let me call it a judgment, because now it escalates to the disciplinary committee, and it was written in the final document that I was the one who was on the wrong because of missing the class and calling past the work hours. And I remember I stormed into the deans of students office. She was a lady. I was like, I've gone through the verdict and I appreciate the verdict, but one thing I will tell you, there are not a lot of women strong enough as I was to push through with this. You know, you're in your third year, you're very scared with a lot of things. You are a young child, you're literally a child, you know? You're a child, you're a girl. And when you try and contextualize it to the ladies who are coming either from backgrounds that really depend on this education, you know, and you're giving them this ultimatum, which ultimatum do you think they'll pick? I had the privilege of knowing I could go back home.
I can actually choose,
And I told the dean of students, for this space, just know the girls in my class and the girls within the engineering department were aware of this case and are aware of this ruling and have lost faith in the protection of the women. And I think from that point, my eyes opened to how uncertain it is for a woman, you know, on how you can be deemed as a prey outside, but again, on how it's possible for you to survive if you're strong enough to fight for yourself, you know. So that was the 5 years. I managed to pass that specific unit and graduate. That is the one thing I'm most proud of. That education, that paper that I got affirming that I have completed the 5 years, I've gotten my undergraduate as an engineer, and that is what has pushed me forward through and through.
Actually, just picking on your story, and one of the critical things that this space and the spaces that we are trying to create is actually being open on our experiences as women, and looking at a very male-dominated space, because engineering is extremely male-dominated, and having gone through sexual harassment, because that is that is actually what happened. It's indeed that you find that young people like you are actually coming out and very boldly saying no to such kind of advances and being open about it. And that set the standard. At that young age, I do believe that set a standard, even within the institution, in them understanding that, yes, you can choose to actually look a certain way, but indeed the girls within the institution are suffering through such kind of things. And I do believe, as you said, for those 5 years and being able to finish and graduate and now get into the spaces where you're young, you're female, do you feel an asset, or do you feel you're a challenge? What helped you navigate actually that campus space, and what is helping you navigate now? Yeah.
A very good question, actually.
Yeah.
Post-graduation, the feeling is mutual for all the graduates, you know, be it the male and the female, in the sense that the confusion lacks, you know. You're wondering, what do I do? You're applying for all those maybe jobs and applications that are not necessarily going through. And you're being hit by the realization that whatever you had acquired in your academia is not necessarily transferable directly, you know, to the world and the market. And now you're understanding all those questions where you're told, try and apply it in the real world scenario. Now you're seeing the need for that. I finished my final exams in December 2022. So my graduation was in June 2023. So I had a 6-month room. I knew from the onset I had to do things from the start. You know, the graduation was not the token to me entering the job market. So immediately when I was done in January, I started looking for volunteering opportunities, because I knew, again, I'm here to the realization, what I have acquired is not necessarily transferable. So I need to get an experience that I can feel in my CV to help me gain at least access into these spaces and access into these rooms. And I think that ideology came from the women that I met during my undergraduate. And this is specifically that third year time. You know, they say that there's two sides to a coin. You know, when something unfortunate happens, there's an equivalent that can come out of that. And for me, I met very strong women, very strong professors who are in the space, who are able to handhold me through that time, and who are able to act as evidence for me for what it looks like after the undergraduate. So that is where I got a lot of insights. And they were very encouraging in the sense of, Lorraine, the job market right now is a bit shaky. So it's up to you to really gather things for yourself as much as possible. So back to now, January, the start of a new year, trying to brainstorm what to do. I came across an opportunity to work at a borehole drilling company. And again, this means road trips, not road trips necessarily, but this means you're staying out in camp, you know, with a bunch of, I was the only lady, so all these are men. You're having the people doing the drilling, your manager, the car, you know, the drivers, all those people you're exposed to are men in that space, and you already have to know how to protect yourself, even if you do not even know how to. So that was a start.
Looking at just from the space that you started from, and you're now a junior advisor, your work involves giving technical advice to a lot of things. Do you feel the pressure to have it all figured out, or this is part of your learning process even as you go along?
I think the story is different now. The pressure is less now compared to how it was in January, you know, the start of this borehole drilling, because you're battling with your lack of understanding of who an engineer actually is. You're doubting your skills, the applicability of your skills. You're doubting the understanding of what you're offering. Now, in my context, in that drilling space of, you know, water surveys and groundwater surveys. And the pressure was constantly mounting and overwhelming. But now when I look at myself at this point, being exposed to men in these powerful spaces, one thing that was very apparent through and through is, to them, everything is a learning curve. Now, you know, that was the realization I was coming through. It's all a learning curve. No one knows. We are all learning. And I am teachable, you know, I'm malleable. If I only knew this then, now the start of January, the start of all these career things would have been easy. The pressure is still there, because one thing as a woman, you always have your antennas up. Because you do not want to find yourself on the wrong to get that comment of, because she's a lady. That is one of the worst things you can ever, you know, dread. You know, that is the one thing you're protecting yourself from. Because you want to prove to yourself that you have earned the position you're in, and you have made everyone within the space believe that you've earned the position. So the pressure has reduced, but the pressure still increases, because, you know, with the word an advisor, and an advisor in the context of the organization I'm working for. You're dealing with people in policy, you're dealing with people in government, you're dealing with people in the treasury, you're dealing with people who are really defining the future of the economy of Kenya. It's high stake, you know, it's very different from how it was in January when the question was, you know, how many meters deep was it drilled to what is the policy going to say. So those are one of those paradoxical answers I can give, in the sense that the pressure has reduced, but the pressure has increased. But the beauty is now I know how to manage myself in this heat.
Okay, fantastic. And looking at managing yourself in the heat of the moment, you are in the space for climate action. How do you see that space, or climate justice, just transition, energy transition? How do you see that space in the context for women and girls?
For the climate and energy, one thing that is apparent through and through, more so when I go for these field visits, is the most affected person are the women and children.
Yes.
You know, we're talking about less reservoirs for the waters where women had to fetch this water. So now you're meeting women who are forced to go longer distances to fetch this water. So more time is taken away from the limited time that would have been used for their personal developments. Again, when you're going back into these discussions of, for example, the carbon registry or forestation or deforestation, it's all about firewood, you know, and you're talking about almost 45% of Kenya still uses this 3-stone cooking style that requires firewood. And who fetches this firewood? How much longer do they have to go to fetch all those things? So it exposes you to the impacts of environment to the women and the unfortunate exclusion that happens when we're drafting solutions and actions, you know. But then you're also being exposed to the discussion that is focusing just transition to include women, because through the research and through the data that has been gathered over time, it's affirmed that women are one of the most affected. So then you're coming across agendas and action plans that are very inclusive of women. It's a bittersweet kind of experience because we are not there yet, but we are somewhere in comparison to where we are. But the climate and environment and energy space, anything including the natural resources, the land resources, the community land, you know, the land in general, the women are the most affected.
Yes. Now, in identifying that the women are actually the most affected, and also in trying to have the solutions include women in the process, are you seeing a scenario where we will get to a place where actually we find now this most affected are actually the ones taking the lead in the solutions themselves? Because remember recently, even in organizing activities, and you can talk to that, you find that this is actually a forgotten group. It's like an afterthought. We don't have a clear track that actually really looks at what are the needs of the women and how can we capacity build them to be able to take the lead in coming up with the solution and the things that they need to do. And you find that these conversations are off the cuff or very minute conversations that really do not carry immense weight when it comes to the general application. We see that the women are actually being left behind in ensuring that the solutions are actually coming up. Looking at the space where you are at and looking at that kind of exclusion, how do you see us moving beyond that and really driving conversations with the women at the same time?
If we can now maybe progress from the borehole drilling space I was in January.
Yes.
A quarter later, around March, I was able to join an organization called Women in Water Association of Kenya.
Yes.
That was dealing a lot with sanitation issues within the space of menstrual hygiene and just, you know, general community sanitation services. And I was exposed to the Leave No One Behind program. That was the first time I came across it. I know that is something that's also very familiar to you.
Yes.
So learning about such programs and comparing it to where I'm at right now in the space of just transition within climate change, one of the most common phrases is leave no one behind. So there is a lot of written requirements to make sure that everyone, and by everyone I mean the women, the children, are being included in this transition. So there is intentionality in including women in the spaces that are drafting the solutions of these impacts.
Yes.
Obviously not to the weight of how much they're being affected, but even when you look at for example, the Africa Agenda 2063, you know, there's a mention of how are we including everyone, you know, the women, the children, the persons living with disabilities in this space. So I am truly hopeful in a future that can increase the capacity of women's contribution in the space. I may not be able to quantify how it is as of now, but it's still very limited, because you find when we're looking into this climate justice, for example, and the most affected areas like the northern region,
yes,
the involvement of those community people, and specifically the women community people, is very limited because of, again, the power play that happens with where is this lady going to speak in what, under what, on based on what. And one issue that has been coming through and through is to have someone draft a solution, they have to know what the problem is. They need that capacity building. They need that an enabled environment for their contribution. So it really dials back not to their contribution, but how are we encouraging or how are we creating a space where more women can contribute. So what I see from, you know, the space I'm in is there is a lot of effort within sector coordination, capacity building, enlightening these women of what their challenges are. Because, you know, sometimes when you sit in something, when you're sitting in the problem, you're oblivious of what the problem is. So for us as women, even in the space, taking up the responsibility to educate and just sharpen the understanding of the space will truly increase their contribution for the solution drafting.
Fantastic. And looking at, just as you mentioned, looking at the local setups and bringing into your solution or your policy advisory on the aspect of starting local. Looking at a country like Kenya, and especially around women, where we have the 47 affirmative action seats, which are predominantly women. How do we leverage positions like this to be able to advance policy development, especially in particular discussions that really leave women behind? Because when you look at legislation, they are the highest policy-making organ. So within the sector engagement, do you see yourself engaging with legislators to really drive that aspect of ensuring that women are included? And how do you balance the high-level global concepts and the local context?
This is where I would say the social science comes in, you know? There's always a need to contextualize these issues and these discussions we're having to the people. And who best to bring this narrative other than, for example, myself, a lady in the space in Kenya, you know, in touch with all this, for example, the climate change impacts. I mean, when we're going back to these high-level legislatures or the policy makers in the space, what I would say is we are already having the is it sociology or the social aspect that is really intentional with when we're planning these symposiums or we're planning these conferences or these exchanges, is to have people and representatives from this community CSOs, the one that will support the advocacy and activism from this local community space. So there is understanding that even if you're an advisor within the space, even if you're a policymaker within the space, you're speaking at a level that's not truly at the local context, and so it's necessary for you to bring in the CSOs to act as a bridge to make sure whatever you're implementing, whatever you're pushing as an agenda or an action plan is truly true to the context of the people in the local setting.
Fantastic. And now just looking at that, truly touching the people at the local setting and looking at your journey and seeing how are you rewriting power, and how are you rewriting influence without waiting? And this is very evident from campus life and now within the marketplace, where you're seeing you're a leader in your own capacity. You've already risen through the ranks. So how are you rewriting power and influence without waiting?
That is a beautiful question, for sure, for sure. I like to say because you can, you have to.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that phrase that I live by is when you find yourself in a space of decision making, it's your responsibility to go through that decision that is about to be passed, you know. And because I am a lady pushing for more representation, you know, looking back from the lessons I've learned with being a young girl in STEM, you know, going through those challenges, finding myself in a space where, you know, you're working with 99% men, I ensure that I really ask myself, is this inclusive, or is this creating more capacity for that young lady who is yet to get to this space? Yeah. So it's because, again, I've said I'm a junior advisor.
Yes.
There's I don't want to say very little influence I have, but I do have influence in the sense that my voice still is heard in this rooms and tables that are really set before me. So I try and push away the idea of fear when it comes to speaking up. So asking, for example, this official decision makers, what are we doing for the youth? What are we doing for the women? I have seen we've indicated this. What about this? What about this? And even if there won't be a direct change, they will always know that there was this question raised. And you know, the beauty with having such discussions, everything is documented. Yes. And so when we're moving on to the next discussion, I will still raise the same question that I had brought this up. Where are we now? And over time, with persistence, for me, I've seen influence means persistence. Yeah. You know, influence means persistence with a cause. So if I stick to the persistence with a cause, most of the time I've seen a change, you know.
Fantastic. And because you can, you have to.
Because you can, you have to. You can, you have
to. I think I love the quotes that you live by, because just knowing that if you can, you have to. And when you're given an opportunity to speak up, or when you're given an opportunity to voice your points, you can carry your generation with you through that voice. So talking about generations, and yes, we had some declarations happening 30 years ago. I know you were not born by that time.
Well.
But these are declarations, we call them the Beijing Declarations, Platform for Action. And on the basis of these declarations is where a lot of the things for women and girls have been implemented. So looking at that, and even though you were not born before then, what are the key areas within this Beijing Platform for Action that you know you will continue to champion for, and you will continue to carry that torch for the next generation of women?
At the top of mind is education. I believe truly education is one of the most empowering thing a woman can have behind her, you know. And this is a belief I've had from my dear mother. She's a teacher. She's been a teacher for over 40 years now. So you can imagine how dear it is for her children to really take this education at a personal level. So even in the space of education, what I try and do, be it in, you know, in this career space that I'm now in, where I'm coming across interns, these are young ladies, be it with a STEM background or technical, I mean IT or policy or economics, my one thing I keep on telling them is make sure you finish that degree. I know it is hard. It is hard. I mean, I've shared one of the challenges that came about my experience of the 5 years academia, and this is just one out of the many stories that a lot of us are not sharing, you know. And I like how you mentioned this is a space, this podcast is supposed to be a space where a lot of us are talking openly about the struggles that we share. Yeah. So the one action area that I continue to carry is women in education, women in empowerment. And also the idea of, you know, sexual harassment comes with domestic violence. You know, it's the build up to domestic violence. There's nothing as demeaning or shattering as the impacts of or even the PTSD of what domestic violence does to you, not only to you as a woman, but to you and your children, and the future generation. So those are the two that I can mention. But we also have women in environment, women in the climate space that I am truly, I believe, at the moment, the center of that.
Fantastic. And just mentioning about your mom, and the reason as to why we bring that, we give a shout out to the women that have carried us, the women that have shaped us. This space is for all women and girls. We might not bring your mother here, but you can give us a shout out to your mom. You can give a tribute to your mom. Yes.
Oh, pleasantly well. I think her name is Faith Wainaina. She's, as I've mentioned, she's been a teacher at the Technical Institute in Mombasa in Thika. But one thing specifically I'd also like to mention is she has been a caregiver to my older sister, Abigail Wanja, who lives with cerebral palsy. And there are different levels with cerebral palsy, but now for hers is the more severe, where you cannot be able to speak or talk or do anything for yourself. So you can imagine what this has meant for my mother as a mother, dealing and caring with a child for over 30 years, and still being able to push me to believe that education and empowerment and standing for yourself and voicing things for yourself is important for you and for the life that, my sister now was not able to really cater for herself. So even when I think specifically of the women who have gone before me, one of them is my mother. A person who makes sure she calls and, asks what is happening at work. Nani amekutukana? Although that never really happens, but she's that constant voice that you are a person in this space. And one thing I like that she always says is, the unfortunate truth is that women have been lied to, that they are not the power holders. But if you see it critically, you will see that in all aspects, be it in corporate, be it in education, be it in motherhood, be it in relationships, you as a woman hold the final say. And if you run with that ideology, you see how much power you have. And I would say I am the way I am in the sense of a strong-willed, determined, stubborn person because of the confidence I've gotten from my mother, And again, when you're looking at the older generations, our mothers, our grandmothers, they were not really able to get to where I'm at my age, I don't know if I should. You're not supposed to mention her ages.
No, but you're young.
Yeah, I'm young, I'm in the mid-20s. So when I'm to compare myself with her at her mid-20s, she keeps on reminding me, Njeri, you have the future in front of you. And don't let anyone take it away from you, because it was taken away from her and from her fellow sisters. So a true shout out to that very strong woman that continues to live.
And as we acknowledge the women ahead of us, the women who carry us, it's indeed amazing how she has brought you up, because you're indeed a very strong-willed woman. And capturing that and just carrying forward and surging forward, seeing the spaces that you come and impact is actually through that upbringing. So to our moms, we actually acknowledge you very much so. And as we continue with this journey, and just that was a tribute to the women before us, to the women who are coming after you. What is that message that you can give to the young girls? Would it be the quote that you carry with you, or what is that message that now you can give to the women who are coming after you? And what is that thing that they need to be able to carry along?
One thing that is truly true is that there is no better time to have been born a woman other than this time moving forward. We're talking about the spaces that are being created. We're talking about the evidence. I mean, even sitting alongside Viridiana is evidence to me, with her position at NGAF and the space that she's creating for those women and girls. You're evidence of what I in the future can look like, And even I hope that my story will shed light to the women who are either yet to come of age or are looking to be in the space of STEM, that it is possible. And there are spaces being created for you. And it's possible for you to stomp with audacity and ask for those spaces and get them, as long as you have the competence to back it. So again, I repeat, there is no better time to have been born a woman other than as from now moving forward. You know, everything is at your hands. Everything is at your disposal. You know, we have all this exposure to information, be it through YouTube, be it through these free courses. It's possible for us to take this empowerment in our own hands. It's possible for us to define our own ideas of who we want to be referred to as, you know. It is, again, a very powerful time to be born, you know, striving and striding on the steps that were taken by the women before us.
Fantastic. Now, picture this. Lorraine is at the global stage. She's speaking to both men and women. What would be the message that Lorraine would give from a whole of society perspective, and also in consideration of uplifting all women and girls, but also ensuring that men own their power to uplift others?
This is one of those causes, and when I say this, I mean the transition to having more women in the spaces. It's a two-party thing, you know. It's a two-gender thing. Yes, we can bring to light the struggles we've been going through, the struggles that we've been kept a secret for such a long time. But for the momentum to really pick up, we also need the men, we call them the male allies, to really back this conversation in the sense that it does not sound foreign to them. So if I am to be standing at this global audience with both the men and the women in the space, what I would say is it is essential for all of us, the men and the women, to really partake in these conversations, to really carry this baton forward. Because the idea is the women to bring forth the challenges, the men to be aware of these challenges, and whilst the women are pushing for these agendas to be included in these written laws, for the men to back them. The only way this affirmative action, not the only way, but one of the most assured ways this affirmative action or this affirmative action agenda we're trying to push, for it to succeed, is we all need to see the value in it. So my question, it will be a question, do you see the value of having women in these spaces? You know, I think if I leave that question to the audience, it would leave them thinking through that question to see then, why is it necessary to have a woman in the space? Because if we answer the why behind the necessity for women to be in the space, then everything else will run its course. Yes. So to you, the viewer, do you see the value of the woman, of that woman you have in mind being in the space?
Fantastic. And in closing, you are a very resilient woman, Lorraine. What does resilience mean to your generation of women? Is it adapting to broken systems? You have gone through a broken system, or is it creating new ones entirely, or is it reshaping? What does resilience mean to you? And you can wrap it up with climate resilience.
For sure. We have seen with, the Gen Z's discussions, and the Gen Z's protest. And I can say with my generation, we are disruptive. And disruptive in the sense that we will ask questions based off the systems we believe do not work. So even when it comes to the workspace, I mean, we've been seeing these discussions of my generation being very keen on, what do you mean by this 9 to 5? Or what do you mean by this 9 to 9? What am I getting in return of my output to this? So when it comes to resilience, for myself and for the women in this generation, is I believe we really hold the power to be inquisitive. Ask the tough question that a lot of people have not been able to ask. And we are creative enough to bring suggestions on board to help reshape the system. But not to say we are not aware of this long-lived system, but we also truly believe in the power that we hold in bringing up questions that will rally more people to see the light that we are trying to see. And so for myself, it's the same thing. If someone might say my academic and my corporate journey has been from a point of resistance, in the sense that you're saying engineering is for ladies, let me show you. And I did it through. And you're here coming in the space where advisory, I don't say advisory is a very male-centered Yes, it is
It
though.
is though.
I'm trying to be diplomatic. But yeah,
Yes.
you know, finding a space where it's very heavily male dominated and trying to do it for myself and succeeding. And the beauty of that is, with the revolution that my generation is bringing, we are gathering more evidence of what's possible, and that means we will continue to reshape the system for more inclusion. And I have so much trust for what that means for the women and girls in the space. And when it comes to climate resilience, I think even moving away from what the definition means, this is just a token to anyone who's watching this. There's a lot of opportunities within climate change. Climate change as a topic, it's not a very westernized issue. The facts are that we understand climate change is brought about by the issue of carbon emissions, you know, and the whole greenhouse gas effect that's brought about by the pollution from the developed countries. But the other factor that a lot of us Africans, if I can speak in the context of Africa, is we are the ones who are bearing the weight of the impact. Africa as a continent is only generating about 4 to 6% of the emissions. So it's very, very little. But the impacts that we carry, as we've mentioned from the, at the start of these conversations on what this means to the women, it's very heavy. And that means with more issues and more challenges in the space of climate change, there's room for opportunities. There's room for you to see what can I do to contribute in this space of climate change. And essentially climate resilience means drafting solutions to address the impacts brought about by this climate change for our own people, So think of it as you're doing work to protect your own continent for your people.
Wow. We have really had an amazing opportunity to have a conversation with Lorraine. And Lorraine says her generation is bringing it. Her generation is asking questions. Her generation is also bringing solutions to the table. Her generation is gathering evidence. And they are coming fully armored.
Exactly.
Yes, with the solutions and with everything that we are looking for. And she reminds us that indeed there are opportunities and we can be able to embrace those opportunities. It was an honor and a privilege. Actually, I'm quite honored and privileged to have this conversation with you. And I don't know if you do have parting words that you can close the session, because I usually close the session, but I do think you should close the session today because this generation have a way of doing things which we need to embrace and we need to love and grow with. So I would give you the opportunity to actually close for us this podcast session.
What an honor. What an honor. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'll go back to my perfect or my most common phrase: because we can, we have to.
Yes.
And you can contextualize that in whatever space, because you can, you have to. There is a space for everyone to find a voice for themselves. What are you fighting for? And because you can, at whatever level that is, you have to.
Because you can, you have to.
Yes. Thank you very much.